parents and caregivers and anyone else who's here watching. I appreciate you being on brightspotparenting.com and watching my latest blog post. I'm video blogging today to talk about why it's good to let your child feel bad. I'm video blogging about this particular post instead of writing this time because I just felt it lent itself better to me talking with you instead of writing today. And I hope that it starts a good conversation. You know, I love when you guys respond in the comments and ask questions and also add to the conversation, share any thoughts that you might have about it as well. So today, why it's good to let your child feel bad. I started thinking about this post after two conversations that I had with different sets of parents. One conversation was with some fellow baseball moms talking about how as parents we feel pressured not just to even help our children with things, but sometimes to do it for them. My child is in the 5th grade and there's lots of pressure on kids in school to do well. And some moms were saying they feel pressure even to do their child's homework so that they don't get a bad grade, so that they don't feel bad in comparison to other children in class. Projects, as an example. They don't want their child to feel that, to experience that failure or embarrassment, whatever that negative emotion might be. Another conversation I was having with a really thoughtful young mom was about how her child is struggling right now with some behavior issues in his relationship with her husband, with his father, that are not necessarily typical of his personality, but he's struggling with whatever emotions he's experiencing as a 5-year-old child, but then also acting out in a way that's not acceptable to them. So how does she balance being a caring, in tune, loving, conscious mom with also not allowing him to disrespect their family rules? So it got me thinking, and as you guys know, I love research and I love thinking about how what we do as parents and educators of young children, how it's connected to how children actually are developing. So one of the things I researched some articles online and thinking about how we can help our children better deal with negative emotions. And I also referenced a book that I've read before that I have to grab. Hold on. It's called The Whole Brain Child, and I highly recommend it because it's a book that doesn't just give you information, which is really interesting and valuable information about how children are developing, 12 revolutionary strategies to nurture your child's developing mind. It does actually give you those strategies. It's a manual about how to use what we know about the right and left hemispheres of the brain, the upstairs brain, the downstairs brain, just about how young minds develop, how we can use our knowledge of that to actually help us parent our children and to help us figure out how to aid them in dealing with negative emotions they may be feeling, as well as some other issues. So great book if you want to look into that. So why is it good to feel bad in general? Negative emotions are actually really important to all of us. I know I've struggled with this just as a woman, myself as a mom, feeling negative, bad feelings, sadness, anger, whatever I'm feeling, and just wanting to make it disappear instead of really acknowledging it and dealing with it. A lot of people are throwing out that word mindfulness. A lot of you may have talked about, may be hearing about that, but it's true. Some of the research that I read, Todd Kashdan is a researcher who's done a book called The Upside of Your Dark Side, Why Being Your Whole Self, Not Just Your Good Self, Drives Success and Fulfillment. in his book, he actually advocates feeling bad, allowing yourself to feel those bad emotions, and says that the single-minded pursuit of happiness is part and parcel of a strong tendency to seek comfort and avoid discomfort of any kind in our culture. And he believes that's actually making us psychologically weak. And as parents, what's our goal for our children? Yes, we want them to be happy. We want them to be successful. But we can help them do this by actually giving them tools that will assist them in developing their own sense of fulfillment in life. Because no one person can actually make another person happy. That includes mom or dad trying to instill that feeling in their child. As much as we want to, we can't do it. So he talks about the fact that avoidance of discomfort is actually toxic, and that statistically, and I've heard this over time, that research actually shows that Americans are getting less happy, not more happy. So what can we do about it? We can help our child to learn how to integrate negative feelings in their right hemisphere, the part of your brain that controls emotions, in the left hemisphere, the part that's logical. We all know that in young children, and our brains are not even fully developed until we're in our mid-20s. We all know that our left side and our right side sometimes are not integrated or working in tandem, and that's especially true for children because the left side of their brain develops later. So the part that's already in control is that emotional side, that right side. That's the part that's more fully developed, and the left side, the logical thinking side, comes later. So integrating the brain coordinates and balances those two regions of the brain. In the book, The Whole Brain Child, the doctors talk about how we can easily tell when our children are not feeling integrated because they are overwhelmed by their emotions, they're confused and chaotic, they can't respond calmly and capably to a situation. Tantrums, meltdowns, aggression, and most of the other challenging experiences of parenting in life are a result of this loss of integration, otherwise known as disintegration. And sometimes you see your child melting down at the grocery store, throwing a tantrum at a restaurant, grabbing hold of your leg when you go to drop them off at preschool when they've never done that before, and crying for you to stay. And you feel like, wow, this tiny person is actually disintegrating before my eyes. So I think all of us can relate to that and have had a moment like that with our child, whether they be very tiny or even our teenagers. We've seen that happen. So we want to balance the two regions of the brain, and we can help our child do that by allowing them to actually feel bad. So when your child feels a negative emotion, when they're stressed, when they're worried, when they're scared, when they're angry, when they're sad, instead of trying to distract them from those feelings or help them figure out a way to suppress those feelings, maybe ignoring whatever situation may have been causing those feelings or contributing to those negative feelings, we actually pay more attention. We want our child to be willing. The word willingness is something that I actually heard recently from Dr. Chris McGinnis, who's a doctor here in South Florida, a therapist who's helped my son and my family in dealing with his anxiety. And one of his methods for dealing with anxious feelings is the willingness. It's step one in getting past an anxiety attack or a panic attack. You actually have to be willing to feel the bad feeling. So as parents, we have to be willing ourselves to let our children feel whatever negative emotions may be arising in them, and acknowledge that we ourselves may actually feel it because we are so empathetic with our children. So we all have to be, it can be really difficult to allow your child to really feel that sadness or that fear or that anxiety or that hurt Um, but we have to be willing to first acknowledge that emotion, then help them to name that emotion, really dig into the details, talk about it with them. One of the methods in the Whole Brain Child they talk about is storytelling, which is something that can be done even with a very young child, even as a toddler. We all know children love to hear stories. There's an example in the book of a little girl who got sick at preschool, previously been really, really happy to go to school, then suddenly started really having tantrums every time her dad tried to drop her off. Sometimes in those moments when our children are tantruming, whether they be 3 or 13, we just need to survive. As parents, we need to survive the moment. We need to move past it, because guess what? I'm dropping you off at school right now. I have to get to work, or I have to get to my appointment, or I just need to leave you at school because you need to be at school. It's the right thing to do. And we just want to move past all the moments. I have to go pick up your brother from school. I have to do this. I have to do that. There's always something for us to do as parents. And many times we just want to squash whatever the negative feeling is, give into it, cover it up, put a Band-Aid on it, whatever it takes to make it stop. We just want to make it stop. If sometimes we can just take a beat, just one breath. If we have time, sometimes it has to come later, but if you can just take a moment and say, I see you. I notice that you're feeling angry. I see that you're feeling sad. Help your child tap into that negative emotion, acknowledge it, and name it. Research shows that it goes a long way towards developing a healthy emotional mindset, toward developing good mental health. Acknowledging and naming whatever negative emotions we may be feeling. And then when your child is calm and not fully in the right brain mindset, you can help them to integrate. You can help them to connect logic and reasoning to their emotional state by storytelling, by drawing out the details. Again, even in a really young child who may not even be a child who may not have even fully developed their language yet, you can tell stories. You can go over with them whatever occurrence may have made them feel angry or scared or worried. Whether your child fell off their bike and skinned their knee and now doesn't want to get back on their bike, or whether your child had an argument with their best friend at school and now her feelings are really hurt about that. Your child may come home and say, I don't want to talk about it. I'm fine. Maybe in a quiet moment, instead of saying, phew, dodged that bullet and I don't have to talk about it, you can go in and say, I noticed that you haven't been wanting to ride your bike since you fell off your bike. Do you want to talk about what it felt like to you when you were riding your bike that day? It was a sunny day, right? And you were on your bike, and then what happened? Really help them tap into the reality, to the logical part of their mind, and connect the true experience to their emotional state. That will help both sides of the brain to integrate. Also, having that conversation with your child creates something that scientists call, and that is mentioned by Dr. Siegel in his book, it creates attunement. They refer to that as feeling felt. So your child hears that you want to be in tune with them, and in fact you probably are. If your child is feeling some kind of negative emotion, you're likely feeling some aspect of that too. But that's really important. You're developing not just a bridge between the two sides of your child's brain, but you're also developing a bridge between you and your child. So that communication about their feelings, and not telling them how they should feel about it, just helping them to process whatever negative emotion they may be feeling, also creates connection between parent and child. So it's a really important thing to do. Not to just gloss over those feelings, not to avoid circumstances and situations, that may cause negative feelings for your child. We all know that we want to raise, or I hope that we want to raise children who are willing to take risks, who are willing to put themselves out there. And the reality is, sometimes when you put yourself out there and you take a risk, it's not well received. You may fail. You may not do as well as you wanted to do. But do we really want our kids to not try because they're so unfamiliar with any feeling of failure, any feeling of sadness or disappointment? It's really important that our children are allowed and encouraged to face those feelings, to feel those feelings, to process those feelings and emotions in the safe haven of our homes, with us as their parents and caregivers, so that they know how to then deal with them as they grow older and are out of our homes on their own, living independent adult lives. So that's really why I wanted to talk about this today. I feel like it's so important for us as parents to make our kids happy, to see them smile, to give them opportunities to feel good, to feel pride, and those are all so important and so wonderful. But sometimes we just have to be in it with them. Let them feel bad. Again, we also want to make sure that we're adhering to whatever discipline you've chosen as a parent to implement in your home. So if you have rules and standards and expectations of behavior, being in tune with your child and helping them feel felt and helping them process their feelings doesn't mean that they just get a free-for-all as far as behavior is concerned. So if your child is struggling with something, if they're having a meltdown, and they start to do something that's not appropriate in your eyes, maybe they're kicking, maybe they're hitting, maybe they threw something, maybe they're using language you don't approve of, that's when it's time for everybody to take a time out. Okay, you need to separate. I'm separating you from this situation right now because the way you're showing how you're feeling is not acceptable to us. I see that you're angry. I see that you're sad. I see that you're feeling bad in some way. I want to talk to you about it, but that's not how we act in our house. Give your child some time to physically calm down, because actually that right brain that is really in charge of our emotions and how we're feeling is really connected to our physical responses as well. So if your child can get a handle on themselves physically, the right brain will calm, the emotions will calm, the body will calm, and it will open a gateway for you to be able to get in there and try to help them integrate the actual circumstance, try to dig into what it was, get the details, find the story, and connect that to the emotional side. So just because you're getting in tune as a parent and making a connection with your child, it doesn't mean that you have to just allow what you would consider to be misbehavior. There's definitely a way to integrate those two parts of your parenting as well. So I really would love to know what you guys think about this. I know a lot of old school parents are, I know my mom would be like, hey, if you feel bad, you feel bad. But there's, in some ways there's something to that, because it develops a sense of resiliency, a sense of perspective, really, when you see that. I like to use the "we're going on a bear hunt" terminology. You can't go under it, you can't go over it, you gotta go through it. Sometimes we just need to go through it. We can't avoid, we can't sidestep, we just have to go through it. And having your children go through their bad feelings, their negative feelings with you, will really help them to be able to be balanced